Morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's wrong to have favourites, but Steve N. Allen and Diane Spencer are mine. Two top comedians reacting to the big stories of the day in tomorrow's papers. That's right, it's time for headliners. Big stories, big opinions, and a few laughs along the way. First up, the headlines with Tamsin.
Mark, thank you. Good evening from the GB Newsroom. Well, let's start with some breaking news this hour. 11 candidates are now in the contest to replace Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. The Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, announced she's entering the race for the Conservative Party leadership, pledging to reverse the national insurance hike and keep corporation tax competitive. Also in the running, newly appointed Foreign Office Minister Rehman Kishti and International Trade Minister Penny Mordaunt, both of them declaring their intentions today. Yesterday, the new Chancellor Nadhim Zahawi, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps and former Health Secretaries Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid threw their hat in the ring. With a crowded field, MPs have started picking their sides. Former Levelling Up Minister Michael Gove says he's backing Kemi Badenoch for the job. Well, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Tom Tugendhat, is also a contender. He told GB News his background in the military makes up for his lack of ministerial experience.
I've got souvenirs from Iraq and Afghanistan. I've got a dodgy shoulder and a dodgy knees from soldiering in some of the hardest parts of the world. I've got photographs, sadly, of some people who aren't with us anymore, alongside whom I served and built a government in Helmand, built the National Security Council of Afghanistan. I've got souvenirs, memories and experiences of the real world.
Well, meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer is set to announce Labour will fight the next election on growing the economy. In a speech in the North East, he'll pledge to promise a fresh start for Britain. The Labour leader plans to hit out at what he calls the hypocrisy of those who served in Boris Johnson's government, saying they supported tax hikes despite being opposed to them all along. In other news, Formula One bosses have launched an investigation into claims that fans face racist, homophobic and sexist abuse at the Austrian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton has condemned the report, saying he's disgusted and disappointed by the allegations, which emerged on social media. F1 described the behaviour as unacceptable and says it's addressed the matter with the promoter and event security. The UK is set to swelter this week with a heat health alert being issued for some regions. The UK Health Security Agency warning comes into effect tomorrow and will be in place until Friday. Temperatures are expected to hit 32 degrees, with those in affected areas being advised to check on vulnerable and the elderly. The UK was hotter than parts of Hawaii today, with highs of 29.5 in London and the southeast. Scotland recorded its hottest day of the year so far, reaching 27 degrees in the Highlands. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to headliners and Mark.
Many thanks, Tamsin. Well, hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Mark Dolan and this is your first look at tomorrow's front pages in the company of two top comedians tonight, Steve N. Allen and Diane Spencer. Are we enjoying the heat wave?
Loving it. That was a harumph.
Yeah. Said no red-headed person ever.
Well, I mean, I quite like being indoors and I quite like the dark, so I am enjoying it because I'm also cold-blooded. So it means that I get to be in the dark in my house with the curtains shut and I'm not cold. It's lovely.
I do think we've got a health and safety situation with Steve N. Allen's woolen suit.
Yeah, I mean, I may regret this later if I end up sweating on TV again. But I'm getting used to the heat because I've converted my shed. As we may have mentioned before, previously, when we've chatted, my shed is now a home studio with a camera and all the microphones, which is a great idea until a heat wave hits. And then I am roasting like I am various vegetables.
Yeah, some of those podcasts do sound quite sweaty. By the way, can we plug the podcast because it's insanely good?
Do I do a podcast?
Yeah.
I do
so many.
Yeah, exactly. I do
a lot
streaming.
of product, haven't you? You're like Bowie in the 80s.
Yeah, keep churning it out. Desperate for work. That's what it is.
Well, look, it's all on his Twitter and Instagram, but he is sweating worse than Prince Andrew tonight. Let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages, and we start with the Daily Mail. And here we go. It's the Tory leadership election, of course. It's the only show in town. Rishi caught in Cummings' toxic smears storm. Rishi Sunak was forced to deny links to toxic former number 10 advisor Dominic Cummings last night. Mr. Cummings has posted poisonous claims online about Mr. Sunak's rivals for the Tory leadership campaign. But the former Chancellor's team insisted he had not spoken to the controversial advisor since he left number 10 in late 2020. It begs the question, of course, Cummings, he made Brexit happen. He helped Boris Johnson become Prime Minister. Can he help Sunak get the top job as well? Is Dominic Cummings still the kingmaker? Also on the front page of the Mail, Liz Truss launches her bid to be our next Prime Minister. That's the Foreign Secretary, of course. Also a photograph on the front page of the Mail. It ain't half hot, ma'am. George swelters on the centre court. The Daily Telegraph next. Truss vows, I would cut taxes from day one. That seems to be the familiar theme of most of the leadership election campaigns. Most of the candidates are saying they will cut taxes, except Rishi Sunak, who says we can't afford it. The cupboard's bare. We will have to wait for tax cuts. That's why I'm calling for him to be Prime Minister, because he's very good at delivering a tough message. If you're curious what I've had to say, check out my big opinion monologue, which is currently on Twitter at GBNews. Little boy few, once again, Prince George there, sweltering in the southwest London heat. Also, Zahawi vows to reveal finances after slurs. This is the Chancellor. You've got to kind of keep up to date with what job he's got at the moment. Used to be the Education Secretary, but he is the Chancellor. And he will happily publish his tax returns to reassure people in the context of that investigation by the HMRC. Same story in The Independent. Zahawi vows to publish tax returns if elected PM. And Djokovic claims the crown. The Serbian has won his 7th Wimbledon title and 21st Grand Slam after beating Nick Kyrgios in 4 sets. It was a good final. The Guardian, Tory rivals scramble for supporters, and an exclusive from The Guardian, great journalism, I've got to say, a special investigation. Leak reveals secret lobbying operation to conquer the world. A leaked cache of confidential files has uncovered the inside story of how the Silicon Valley tech giant Uber flouted laws, duped police, exploited violence against drivers, and aggressively lobbied governments during its global expansion. The FT, Tories to thin leadership field as rancour rises between rival camps. The Daily Mirror, ambulances in worst ever crisis. Patients wait up to 27 hours at A&E as hold-ups hit 999 call-outs. And 43 degrees centigrade, warning of killer scorcher. There you go, a heatwave certainly hits these shores and it will be with us for some time. Metro next, power block. Starmer and top Tories agree on decision to refuse a new Scottish independence poll. Boris Johnson is not Boris Johnson, he's no longer Prime Minister. The candidates seeking to replace Boris Johnson have joined forces with Keir Starmer to rule out a second Scottish independence referendum, saying at least 10 years should pass before another poll happens. That's an agreement between Starmer, Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid. And last but not least, our good friends at the Daily Star. Helter Swelter, Hawaii Sky-Vo, warmer than Honolulu and we don't want to work. A Saharan tongue of fire, which used to be my nickname, making 33 degrees centigrade Britain hotter than Hawaii, will tempt 70% of Brits to consider skiving off to sunbathe. And 41 degrees centigrade is predicted by the weekend. Yikes, say the Daily Star. And those are your scorching hot headlines. Monday's Telegraph has Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, vowing to cut taxes from day one, and Nadeem Zahawi vowing to reveal his finances after slurs. Who wants to have a go at this one?
The Daily Telegraph has
Did you nearly call them the Terrorgraph? Were you editorialising, Spencer?
I think I was. What a Freudian slip.
By the way, bang goes your quirky weekend column. Spencer's World.
Spencer's World, it's all about how you live, like, out of the sunlight. It's very popular if you come from under a rock. So there is an exclusive, and it's all about the anti-Rishi mucky memo, which has been setting the Tory WhatsApp groups alight. So a 424-page salvo, which I looked up is a rapid rate of artillery fire, has been gunning down Rishi Sunak, and it's been spread like wildfire through the Tory WhatsApp groups. So they're predicting that every single Tory MP has read this by now, and they even called the title of it "Get Ready for Rishi." So people who would have been looking to vote for Rishi and support him, because apparently about 30 MPs are on his side for the leadership bid, would have definitely read that. But it is just taking him down, and it calls him sorts of names. It says that he is a liar, a schoolboy. It says he's full of arrogance, indolence, ignorance, like all the worst kind of reindeers.
Nothing like the previous incumbent.
Yeah, nothing like that, no.
A liar? Could you imagine such a thing?
No, I mean, that would be ridiculous. And it's got all about him breaking manifesto promises, you know, like if you went back on a major deal you'd signed or something like that, or a trade agreement. So basically this thing massively attacks Rishi, and it's clearly trying to stop him from being sort of put in place as the potential favourite, because I think he is the bookies' favourite. I think you can only get 4-1 on him. But the thing is, this is an unnamed author. And my question is this Russian meddling? I know that they have been saying that it is coming from the Thatcherite wing of the party, but I genuinely do believe that there is still a lot of meddling from foreign powers in our elections. And this is a very crucial time for the UK, and Boris has been very popular in Ukraine. So I just have questions like that, because tomorrow, on Monday, the chairman of the 1922 committee is going to announce the timetable for this leadership campaign. So it's weird that this kind of like mad, like it's a rush on anti-Rishi, which makes it sound like we're all running to our favourite auntie for sweets or something. But like it's an anti-Rishi rush, and it's happening now. Why now? Because they're about to announce the leadership thing.
Or is it loyalists to Boris Johnson seeking revenge?
I think there'll be loads of it. It's different camps for different reasons. What I love about this story, and some of the others we'll talk about in a bit, for ages we've known that whenever there's a leadership contest for the Conservatives, something strange happens. The names that we know, the people who are the favourites, never end up getting it. Why is that? That's because if there's one thing they do well, it's stab in the back like you wouldn't believe. Maybe this time we've got slightly more transparency about it, because we're seeing how it happens, but it's so effective. As soon as he sticks his head up, oh, a bit of a favourite, is he? Let's go through the file. What have we got on Rishi? And send. Yeah, you're right. They're calling him a liar. They're also pointing out that there's a clip that's been going around on social media where he says he doesn't have any working-class friends. If anything, he's just being honest there, isn't he? That'll never catch on. He shouldn't be that. But I love that this is happening on WhatsApp now, Basically, the people who are in charge of this nation are cyberbullying like they're teenagers and they don't like one of the group. This is unbelievable.
It's true. I'd have muted them by now myself because it gets very boring. Dominic Cummings, I think will feature in this contest behind the scenes. For months now, he's been very critical of the Prime Minister and he's been always positive about Rishi Sunak. So he was instrumental in making Brexit happen as the mastermind behind Vote Leave. The mastermind behind Boris Johnson's surprising election victory in 2019. Can he do the treble and get Rishi Sunak into number 10?
I'm not sure because there's overlap in those first two. It's about using Brexit. My comment now won't be whether it's good or bad. It's about how you can use it to whip up a vote, to galvanise people. I think maybe that ship sailed. It should have done. I'm sure I've heard the phrase, someone got Brexit done. So that's done, isn't it? So to try and sew it into the next candidate, oh, we need them to get it done, we've got to move on to different things. Cost of living should be the thing they're fighting over.
Would you like to address Diane's theory that Russian involvement could be a factor? And if so, that would tell us that Rishi Sunak would be very hard on Russia and therefore probably should be Prime Minister. If the Russians don't want Sunak, then we probably want Sunak.
No, I think that's the first mistake we make is to then work out, what do they want? They just want to shake the boat up a bit. In general, it's about disturbance.
Very true.
Yes.
Just cause a bit of a mess. And if we're infighting, we're not paying attention to things that they might want us to not notice.
Who knew? Well, from one Tory candidate with a tax scandal, I should say, over his head to another, not a sex scandal. Let's have a look at this story in Monday's Times, Steve.
Yep, so Nadeem Zahawi's doing well. Quick, Rolodex, what have we got? Oh, it turns out some kind of issues with his tax. I mean, not only that, later in the story there's issues of fraud in there as well. But at the moment, your main headline is there's some offshore tax investigations that have to be done. This was previously looked into by the National Crime Agency. They didn't find that there was enough information to call it a crime, but there was enough information to hand it to HMRC when he becomes the Chancellor, because it's a bad look, isn't it? If the tax man is having to investigate the Chancellor, it's not going to look good in the front pages. And actually, there is an issue, because as soon as we talk about people moving their money offshore to avoid paying tax, at some point in that argument, someone will say, well, you can't blame them for doing it. If you're not happy with it, close the loopholes. Oh, who should we speak to about closing the loopholes? I'll just get the Chancellor. Wait a minute, it's the guy who loves the loopholes. So there is a reason to look into this a little bit more. I mean, do you want someone who loves a loophole and is pretty swift at avoiding tax, like Neo in The Matrix? Is that the kind of thing we want? I mean, the Telegraph, the Times itself actually says that he's the second richest MP. So isn't that a good person to be in charge of the nation? Well, not if it was achieved through these means. Now, there's also questions over the licensing of T-shirts that he made when he out of business that he didn't have the licences for, but then handed Tesco some paperwork that had signatures on that were faked. I mean, all of this, straight out the Rolodex, trying to ruin someone's chances.
Blimey, as long as they weren't those really ugly tie-dye T-shirts, I don't mind. Because that's a crime against fashion, isn't it?
Oh, my God, you'd have been like the first person I'd have said, oh, no, Mark will definitely... He'll have a tie-dye T-shirt. He'll have one of those ones that changes colour when you, like put your hand on it and stuff. The thing I find interesting about this Times story is that it paints Mr. Zahawi as, like, leaving this mass destruction in his wake. He's like the guy who always gets away. Like, he's left behind a trail of collapsed firms, bust firms. They've lost, like, 1.3 billion. They've collapsed and, like, lost, like, all the workers have gone out of work. But he somehow... Zahawi's got away, and like he just keeps getting away and he keeps making more money but just leaving this like trail of destruction. That's how this reads.
Wow. OK, well, it certainly looks like he's on a sticky wicket at the moment, but it will be a long race with a winner not expected to be declared until late August or early September. Monday's Mail next, and sticking with our delightful theme of tax, it looks like footballers are also embroiled in their own scandal, Diane.
Yes, so a record 329 professional footballers are under investigation for suspected tax avoidance. So, right. This is amazing. So we all know that football is dodgy as you like. I mean, I think it is. You can't charge that much for a sausage roll and say that nobody's like making a little bit on the side. And what has been happening is that players have been setting up corporations. So when their images are being used, instead where their images are being used, instead of like being paid directly to the footballer, which would then incur like a 40% income tax fee to HMRC, instead of that, they are paying themselves, so they only have to pay 19% corporation tax. So that's one of the ways that they've been avoiding tax. And again, there's a difference between tax avoidance and tax evasion.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of them is using completely legal loopholes and the other one is running away with your books under your arm. And like, we already know that footballers make so much money and their agents make so much money, but they've also been paying sort of agents' fees to they call them sister sides. So they don't name who this Premiership Football Club is, but if you type in Premiership Football Team sister sides, you get a list of about 7, so you can whittle it down for their armchair detectives. So, and they've been paying their, like, European sister sides the agents' fees for these massive international transfers, and there should be a tax on that because it's a business transaction. So we're basically being diddled out of the British people are being diddled out of a lot of tax by the football people.
Well, yes, you have the spirit of the law and the letter of the law, and these public figures who are very privileged and paid tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, surely make enough money just to pay the correct rate of tax, which the rest of us mere mortals actually do, Steve.
Yeah, there is that where you think, look how much you're getting, why do you need to try and be more efficient? You certainly...
Especially when you turn up to charity events and turn up to schools and do loads of kind of integration in the community type workshop stuff.
Yeah,
and
paying tax would help the community.
Turning up to food banks and being very groovy, which is all positive. But if you're not paying all the tax you're supposed to take...
Yeah. But then part of me, and I think this is my bias, looks at this and straight away has sympathy. Straight away, part of my mind goes, oh, they've probably been given bad advice. And I think it's a bias that we all have because we kind of presume that footballers might not be the sharpest tool in the shed. I'm obsessed with sheds. I mean, it's not true because, what was it, Frank Lampard, member of Mensa. I think this is just the Rooney effect, that you look at it and think, oh, there's no way they came up with this plan on their own. Bless.
No.
But actually, maybe they did.
Yes, indeed. OK, well, look, that one is clearly going to grow and grow as a story. That could be a sporting scandal, one to watch. The Guardian next, and another scandal of uber proportions, Steve.
Nice. Time to get the app and give it a 1 star because there's leaked files. And The Guardian have this now. Some people may hate The Guardian, but there's one thing they do. They churn through paperwork, don't they? The number of files in this is 124,000 documents. They say documents. Some of them are IM messages, things like that, so short emails. But it's looking at the aggressive global expansion of Uber back in the days when it was the first co-founder, Travis Kalanick. And some of the stuff in there, messages where they're saying, oh, we're illegal. They know that they're breaking laws. And they absolutely didn't care. This is part of the problem of having something that's based on, like, that type A personality, psychopaths in business are really good. And then if you know you want to be a disruptor, you can cause problems. They've been up close with mayors and politicians and prime ministers. I'm not sure what they offered them. Couldn't have been a free ride. You know, they've basically focused on people who already have a car provided for them. So that's not what's in there. I mean, maybe it's the old dirty money. The article, interesting, but absolutely huge. I will say that you can get basically a lot of this. They made a TV show on Amazon Prime about this. Isn't that interesting? Amazon teaching us how a big market disruptor might be evil. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, who'd have thunk it? I mean, the issue we've got, Diane, is I think I'm tempted to defend Uber in some ways, and not for this malpractice or any corruption, of course, but attempt to make Uber a more generous, fair company has actually impacted drivers in many ways. I've spoken to lots of Uber drivers who said that by forcing them to become employees rather than contractors, they actually have more costs, that they've got less freedom, they can't choose their hours to the same extent. And not every Uber driver was happy that they were brought into line and made employees. The issue with Uber is it has democratized taxi travel. Because, I mean, if you're to get rid of a business model like Uber, what are you left with? Very expensive minicabs and black taxis.
But this is an incredible story about world domination and infiltration of multiple governments by a company that did not stop at all. They weaponised their drivers. They said, no, go out, get violent. If they get violent against us, we can just put it out into the press and say, look about how Uber drivers are being treated. This is absolutely incredible how they purposefully skirted around mayors. They skirted around the different people that they were supposed to apply to get to the person who could make the decision. And then they basically, it's implying that they just plied them with money and treats. And yeah, you're right. I mean, like, good grief. I mean, all I get from Uber is, oh, sorry, we're not going to pick you up now. We've given up. We tried 3 times. We tried.
It is true. Nothing beats a ride in a black taxi. I've got to admit that. That's a very fair point. Last but not least for this section, let's talk about this story in the Daily Mail. And our first story on Boris of the day. Remember him? Already relegated from our top stories. But what's he up to, Diane?
Well, his name is Johnson, Boris Johnson, and he is going to be parachuted into Kyiv as the special envoy. They're going to keep him on, and they are going to make him the special envoy to Russia. And I think it's quite a positive thing, because he kept flying out to Ukraine anyway. He was supposed to, like, do stuff here that he didn't do. He's like, oh, no, sorry, I got to go to Ukraine. And, like, when we had the pandemic, he was good for the pandemic, he was good for Brexit, because you kind of need somebody who's a little bit flamboyant, a little bit of a cheerleader. Well, we've kind of got through that now. We're a little bit more calm, and now we're like, you did what during that time? Like, I'm glad that you were there cheering us on, but you did all of that stuff? No. You can go. We need somebody a bit sensible in now. But Ukraine, they are still in a whole heap of trouble. So it's kind of nice that, like, Boris will still be there, and he's already made all the connections, and he's already talking to people, and he's suggesting, come on, guys, let's take our tops off and take photos on horses. So he's already, like, got the connections with people, so hopefully he will do some good.
Although whoever the new Prime Minister will be will hate the idea of Boris Johnson on the international stage. Photo opportunities, making the headlines. It's our next Prime Minister's worst nightmare.
And I think, what other story is yet to break that Boris is trying to find a way out of the country? Already lining up the jobs elsewhere.
There's a million-dollar question. Coming up after the break, petrol theft on the rise, the battle to keep kids away from pornography, and how woke was the Roman Empire? Find out after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Mark Dolan. A first look at tomorrow's big stories. In the company tonight of two fantastic comedians, two good friends of mine, Steve N. Allen and Diane Spencer. The Express newspaper now, and if only our police forces were as on it as HMRC, all our problems would be solved, wouldn't they, Steve?
They would be, but they're not, because half of the UK police forces are failing in their basic duties. First question has to be, all right then, what basic duties are these police forces failing at? Answering 999 calls. Well, what are they doing then? Let them go to voicemail? I've not, thankfully, had to call 99 for a while.
Well, no, it's actually very good, because when they say if it's a stabbing, press 1.
Oh, good.
If it's burglary, press 2. You know, it's quite, you know...
Your call is important to us, and while you're being mugged, you can listen to Greensleeves.
Yeah, definitely.
Also on the list of basic functions, basic duties, it says investigating crimes. Well, if you're not doing that, what are you? You're not a police force. You're more like almost a tribute act to the full Monty. I don't see what they're actually doing. Now, one of the police forces they've looked at in the article in the Express, Wiltshire Police, one of the 6 forces placed into special measures, has poor performance and was found to be inadequate at responding to public and protecting vulnerable people. Now, I don't want to be regionalist here, but I'm about to be. Wiltshire? How many crimes are there in Wiltshire? You imagine it's just tractor-based, isn't it? I used to live there. I used to work on a radio station down there. It didn't seem like it was the hotspot of difficult-to-solve crimes. Also on the list, you've got the Metropolitan Police and special measures, Cleveland, Gloucestershire, Staffordshire and Greater Manchester. So if you do want to do some robbings, I would strongly suggest you head down there.
I do think that, Diane, the public sector is in crisis across the board. So there are people very upset with the NHS, not blaming the individuals like nurses and doctors, but they can't get a face-to-face GP appointment. They're waiting for these elective treatments. And I think it brings a cloud over the NHS. It almost brings them into disrepute. We're seeing the same with police, aren't we?
Yeah, this is immensely alarming that they just seem to be permanently on Operation Base Tan and they're just kind of like strolling around, soaking up rays. I mean, Wiltshire is where they actually reported a non-crime hate incident because an 11-year-old boy got called short.
Yeah.
And it's like, why are you wasting your time with that when you aren't solving any of the serious crimes? I don't know what has happened, but clearly the wheels have come off the cart somehow.
Well, yeah, let's stay on a similar theme because in the Mail, we've got a story about fuel going cheap if you want to risk jail time, Diane.
Yes, so weird thing, as the fuel prices are rising, rises in theft are happening at fuel forecourts. So look out for people with soggy pockets. Now, there is also a change in how people are stealing the fuel. So apparently, if you sort of pull up, fill up your tank, and then you drive away, that's a criminal offence. However, if you pull up, fill up your tank, and then you go, oh, gosh, do you know what? I have no means to pay. I'm not encouraging this. But you say, oh, gosh, I have no means to pay. That becomes a civil case. And then some forecourts get you to sign a memorandum saying, I promise I'll pay for my fuel in a week. But because the fuel is so high, the thefts have just massively increased. I mean, thievery is not a good thing. It can impact your life far beyond the moment when you steal the fuel. But it doesn't really surprise me that this is happening now. If people are already going to steal fuel and the prices have just gone through the roof.
Well, a friend of mine sent me a photograph of cheese that had a security tag on it in the supermarket.
Brilliant.
Cost of living crisis, petrol, cheese, everything's an expensive commodity now.
Yeah, but surely no one's selling that down the pub. You imagine people nick stuff, because razor blades always used to be tagged.
I want to apologise. I bought half a pound of Cathedral City earlier today at my Wetherspoons.
Not been refrigerated.
From, Big Jim.
I will say
his cheese was, it was humming, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, he gave it, I saw it in the toilets, because obviously that's where you do illicit deals. That's when he showed it to me.
That's when
I actually looked at it. I said, I'll take as much of that as you've got, Big Jim.
On the petrol thing, though, I will say, look, firstly, the amount of money that's been nicked, or the worth of it, it means, do we know that more petrol's been nicked, or is it just that the same amount's been nicked, but my word, it's more expensive these days?
Yeah.
But if you are going to nick it, I'd suggest, not doing the telling them first, if you are going to drive off, I'd do it in Wiltshire, Cleveland, Gloucestershire, Staffordshire, Greater Manchester.
Steve N. Allen's Crime Club. There you go, a new format for GB News. The Time's next, and the battle against porn rages on in our classrooms, Steve.
Yeah, it causes problems with expectations. It can change how you think things are going to... I mean, not even just in terms of the plumber turning up when they...
Well, I don't let Mrs. Dolan see porn because I don't want to give her any ideas.
Good. best not to. But it can apparently change what you think bodies should be like. So now school children are going to be given lessons on female anatomy to counter the damage caused by pornography and social media. So you think, well, surely they're not watching that much porn. Here's the stats. More than half of 11 to 13-year-olds and 2/3 of 14 and 15-year-olds have seen some pornographical images. Most of them say they stumbled across it accidentally. And I remember being 13. I would have said that too. Or I would have come up with some lie about looking at tractors or something stupid. But separate researchers found that more than a third of teenagers who have seen porn then start to worry about themselves. How do you get the message out there saying, no, you don't want to look like the people in these things? You don't want lips that make you look like a goldfish getting rid of the green mould off the side of the tank. You don't want... You can be natural and still like your body. Now, their solution is to have lessons where boys and girls will be shown pictures of the downstairs business. And one of them, it says, including hair, which means, I guess, they're also teaching about history, 1980s. I remember it well.
My favourite musical.
But but that's how they've got to fix it. These lessons are there to say, no, the stuff you see online, that's not what we're all like. Have a look at these.
I can't disagree that that's a good idea. Can you, Diane?
I can, because what I worry about is when they make blanket rules that apply to every single school. And hear me out on this. If you sent out this questionnaire and you ask children in one school, how many of you have seen pornography aged from 11 to 13, for example, in one school, yes, it might be a third, but in another school, it could be 0. And if you change the law, suddenly every single school is going to be showing this, and it might be a bit early for some kids, is all I'm saying. I just hope that there's a more delicate approach. And I think it's strange that it's only the female anatomy that they're showing, because surely the boys have unrealistic expectations as well, because everybody is different and we're all quirky in our own way. And also, it makes me question, well, what kind of pornography are they watching? Because if they're watching sort of a category which is like amateur, then you're most likely going to see normal bodies. But if you're watching something where everybody's sort of, you know, inflated and extended, then of course you're going to look different. So I think that this is an interesting sort of way to tackle this problem, but I just hope they don't make these massive blanket rules, because I do worry about kids and I worry about them being overexposed to things.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair point, and it was a theme raised in last night's show. Josh Howie, one of our brilliant headliner stars, whose comments about the sexualisation of children at school went viral. So do take a look at our Twitter feed at GBNews for that one. A remarkable bit of TV that was. The Guardian now, and as Julius Caesar said, I came, I saw, I went woke. Or did he, Diane?
So this is an interesting story. The UK school Latin course is going to be overhauled to reflect the diversity of the Roman world, which I can sort of understand, because when you read sometimes history books, they will have been created by a certain set of people at a certain period of time, and they might show Romans as lots of white people walking around, and I don't think they were. So they're going to just give them a revamp, and what I like is that Stephen Hunt, a Latin scholar at the University of Cambridge, has said every textbook needs a revamp every now and then, which I like. And he said, you know, it's been in existence since the 1970s, so why not give it a bit of a zhuzh? And they're actually trying to make it more realistic, more appropriate to what was going on in Roman times. And they want to sort of give different angles on, like, the experiences of the slaves, for example, instead of just sort of stereotyping the slaves as this is the happy slave, this is the unhappy slave. They want to actually say, well, this is the story of that person. So I understand that. But this is kind of weird because only about 10,000 students sit GCSE Latin each year. It's interesting that it's still taught. I guess those people want to go on to become doctors or something, because you have a lot of Latin in doctoring, I suppose.
You do.
Canis est in aquarium. And but it's different between the independent schools and the state schools. So it's only taught in 3% of state schools, whereas sort of 49% of independent schools will teach Latin. So
Latin is very important in medicine, isn't it? And you're very proud of your rectum, aren't you?
It was caveat emptor. That's what I'll say.
I looked up your rectum.
Did you?
Yeah.
What?
I looked it up.
OK.
I totally disagree with this story. Firstly, what's this? That learning Latin might be old and outdated. Come on, how are you trying to make learning Latin a new thing? You're right, it's not many people take the GCSE. They're all posh people. They're all posh schools. Apparently the government tried to get state school. I went to a state school comprehensive. We didn't touch any Latin with a barge pole, which now means I can't go on a holiday to ancient Rome. But other than that, it's just learning a language so you can show off how clever you are to other people who are posh. No.
Yeah, that's right. Fascinating. Well, look, that is an interesting story, and we'll get to our next one now, which also caught my eye. Everyone's favourite royal is back in tomorrow's Mail, Steve.
Yeah, so apparently we were going to get a Prince Harry book, a tell-all, but it might be delayed because it's not been included on a list of Penguin's new releases.
Well, I'm gutted. I've ordered it on Amazon. I'm waiting.
I bet you were. But no, I bet you were, because you fall into the category of people who say you don't like him, but my word, you spend a lot of human time paying attention to what he...
without Prince Harry, I don't have a
Yeah, basically.
There's a section of Mark's brain called Frogmore Cottage, because that's where Harry lives.
No, exactly, rent-free. Without Harry and Meghan, my show is basically, blimey, it's hot today, isn't it?
Have you ever tried just ignoring them? Because your life gets a lot better. These are royal people, so they're famous people without even a good reason to be famous. And he was going to write a tell-all book. No wonder it's delayed. A tell-most you could do, but a tell-all, that's going to take a long time, isn't it? And then you've got to get it proofed.
He's in a difficult spot, isn't he? Because he wants to get on with his life, which I think is entirely his right. You know, he wants to be normal. He wants to look after his family and have a career. And I think good luck to him. But he's also still, he holds a royal title. He's the Duke of Sussex. Duke of Sussex. Yeah. And therefore it's still the royal title. So he wants to lead the royal family, but he can't really, can he?
I don't think he actually wants to. I don't think he knows what he wants at all. And I am not surprised that they haven't announced this book, because they're supposed to be doing a podcast for Spotify. They're supposed to be doing a series for Netflix. And he has failed to do any of these things. And he's supposed to be writing a book. He's producing no content whatsoever. His only content is chatting to Oprah. And that's when he does his tell-alls, which are, like you say, tell-sums. And they're not that good. And then Meghan's version of events, some recollections may vary. I don't think Harry actually knows what he wants now that he's been pulled out of the royal family, because he's not in opposition anymore. When he was in the royal family, he was like, I want to be the head guy. I want to be the thing. I want to be the thing. And so Meghan's like, well, just bust out of it. Let's just bust free. And they bust free. And now he's like, I don't know what to do now.
Although, I mean, he does say in this book he would be writing about the highs, the lows, the mistakes and the lessons. So I'm sure there'll be a whole section on that Nazi uniform. If that doesn't happen, I mean, maybe you're right. He doesn't know what he's on about.
He hasn't produced any podcasts. Maybe he should do some in your shed.
He's invited, because I don't have a problem like you. I don't obsess. I don't care either way. They're only royals.
What you need to do, though, is you need to install some air conditioning.
I'm thinking of shed air conditioning. I've looked into it. The problem is the exhaust vent, because that's how the Death Star went the wrong way. You've got to be careful about this. But that's where all the spiders come in. I've had it sealed. This is a sealed shed. No spiders are getting in, or air, as it turns out. I need to look into that. But now I need to, if I have a vent, next thing you know, the big spiders will be in.
I've never been more grateful for an ad break. Coming up, the frog army that could be an environmental disaster, the snakes on the loose around the UK, and the Johnny Depp story making noise there about his defamation case. It's a great story, Johnny Depp, in the next section. We've saved our best till last. See you in 2.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know. The latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Headliners, your first look at tomorrow's papers. With me helping do just that are the brilliant comedians Steve N. Allen and Diane Spencer, stars, of course, of Ministry of Offence, which is back on Saturday night at 8 o'clock, always unmissable. Or you can catch up on our brilliant GB News app. Lovely to have your company if you're watching or listening on DAB+. The Guardian next, and here's a story concerning comics at the Fringe, Diane. Which will be you soon, won't it?
Well, once my cold clears up. So, post-Brexit rules...
Sounded like Omicron to me.
Oh, no.
Top notes of Omicron.
Oh, yeah, it's an undertone of Omicron. No, there's a hint of maybe Delta.
Two red lines? You're trying to kill us?
No, I'm going all retro. I've had, it was... a cold, yeah. I'm like, yeah. She dresses like she's in the past, and she catches the old viruses.
I've got a local drug dealer that's so good, he can get you Kent variant if you want it.
Oh, yes, sign me up.
Variant, which is like golden oldie now.
Yeah,
hard to get.
Back in the day.
So the Edinburgh Festival director, and this is, I should stress, this is not the Edinburgh Fringe where I will be appearing, but this is the Edinburgh International Festival. So their director has basically said that the post-Brexit visa rules are a disaster for the arts because it means that it's very difficult for English and Scottish, but British people to then tour into Europe, because previously you sort of showcase your piece and then the people from Europe will come and they'll watch you at the festival and go, oh, this is wonderful, we must have it in our theatre. And then you go and you go on tour.
Jamaicans go to the Edinburgh Fringe.
All the time, it's very popular. But the issue is that obviously the visas are an issue, and also the fuel is an issue. So shipping over scenery is a problem, and then shipping artists back is a problem. So basically, there's lots of problems. And this person has said that it's just please, can we have some kind of visa waiver for the arts, because that is the most important thing that needs to be solved. They can't stop the theatre. You know, it's not like there's anything else that needs to get through, like lorries and sausages.
Yeah, old Spencer's got to have her sausages. Elton John's been beating a drum about issues for artists, musical artists, in relation to the new rules. There needs to be some kind of ceasefire between the EU and the UK on issues like this, don't you think?
This issue has got nothing to do with anything that we've ever talked about. No one voted for Brexit thinking, do you know what? I do want to stop artists touring. It's off the page. There are good reasons or bad reasons or whatever. So come up with something that just lets that carry on. Because no one's benefiting from this.
Don't you think that when the heat has come out of the Brexit argument and when we get to the next generation of politicians in Brussels and in the UK that weren't involved in Brexit, that didn't make it happen, that there will be a more pragmatic relationship?
Well, you'd hope so, because I suppose there'd be no reason to cling on to those battles. I noticed in some of the newspapers, actually on social media as well, people are listing which Conservative candidates for leaders said things about Brexit back in the day. Look how we're making that 4-year-old argument still pertain to today. So some people are going to drag it on for a while. But you're right, at some point there'll come a stage where the politicians will realise, oh, we can sort out visas. If there's one thing politicians are good for, surely it's paperwork.
Well, they are indeed. That's what they were born to do. Let's move on now to the Daily Mail. And obesity seems to be affecting the poorest communities, Steve.
Yes, more than half of children in some areas are overweight. That's per capita, I guess, because more than half if it's measured by per kilo. But according to the shock figures, the threshold of at least 50% of Year 6 pupils being overweight or obese has now been passed by at least 2 local authorities, South Tyneside and Tower Hamlets. And there is that link. This is the thing where you see the statistical link between obesity and poverty. And at some point, someone will say on some discussion show, well, it's actually cheaper to eat healthily. That's all right. We're all very well saying that sentence, but empirically, we're seeing the actual real-life evidence of poorer equals fatter. So your claim's not actually either being heard or being fully understanding all of the different variables. There is something that means when you get a downturn in money, you get bad outcomes in terms of weight. And they point out that because it's been the pandemic, it's not to do with being sedentary. I think weight is more about what you eat.
It really is. I think that's a red herring.
Yeah.
I think exercise is great for mental health and it's good for overall health. But in relation to weight loss or the accumulation of body fat, it's very much what you eat, as you say.
Yeah. And the chairman of the National Obesity Forum, Tam Fry...
Very fat man.
Just makes me hungry, even the name.
Yeah, Fry baby, I know him well.
Tam Fry, I'd have some fried Tams.
What a glutton he is. He's like, oh, do you want some Monster Munch? I'm like, you represent the National Obesity Forum. He's a total hypocrite. Always snacking.
Oof, yeah.
Loves a snack, does our Fry.
I bet he does.
No, but he makes this point.
Yeah, it's gone up during COVID, but I think it's more to do with the emotional impact in our life of the lockdown that then means we eat bad food.
And also, do you know what we've done? We've allowed now the food industry to be responsible for the national diet. So rather than actual potatoes and steak and sausages and, what you would call food, it's products, isn't it? Stuff in boxes.
The big change was when food stopped being made by farms and started being made in factories. And there would have been a stage where you would have heard that sentence, food made in factories, where pipes are from, and you would have thought that doesn't make any sense. But now all the food's from factories.
Yeah, too right. A deep concern, and I think probably the biggest crisis facing this country, if I'm honest. Just my view. Speaking of food, here's good news in tomorrow's Mail for local produce, Diane.
So the Daily Mail have gone with Save the Dorset Knob and Rutland Ripon. More staples of British regional cuisine deserve to be granted protected status, say MPs. So the regional foods need to be given the same sort of protected status as, for example, champagne only comes from a certain region of France, which is called Champagne. Yeah. So you know that it's the official thing that you're drinking.
The Italian town of Prosecco.
Exactly. You've got it in one.
Turin, isn't it? Am I right?
So there's this list of foods, and they want to increase the number of protected products from 81 to 200 by 2030. And the idea is that then you sort of increase the value of those foods, because then when people check the labels, the theory goes that you go, oh no, this is a proper, actual, like Wensleydale cheese. This is exactly the right thing. So you can't say that it's a Wensleydale cheese if it's not from this particular place. Jersey royal potatoes, Cornish pasties. So what on earth are you going to call a pasty if it's not a Cornish pasty?
Oh, I know, a pasty.
You really just call it a pasty? You can't call it. You can't call it like a meat parcel.
No, but no, you wouldn't have to go jump through that hoop.
You're sure?
My baked meat parcel.
Yeah. Yeah, you could get a little one. Could I have a meat envelope, please? I'm not very hungry. So that's what they're doing, yeah, because apparently only 10% of UK shoppers, though, so this is interesting, only 10% of UK shoppers look for protected status labels. So only 10% of UK shoppers are like, no, I want the actual proper Jersey royal potatoes. Whereas 52% of Italians and 40% of French consumers seek out the EU equivalent.
I'm in that 90%. I don't care where it's from. Oh, this food, it's not from the correct county. There's an example in there where they talk about the Melton Mowbray pork pie. Oh, that's right, I just eat pork pies. So they're still a thing. The only thing that they should put...
It's not called a pork pie, it's called a meat bucket.
Is it? Ooh.
With a lid. A lidded meat bucket.
My meat parcel, your meat bucket. This is an interesting chat. The only thing that they should actually put...
You say tomato.
They should probably, patent the Kent variant, your dealer. It's authentic Kent variant.
Mr. Z.
I want it to be from actually Kent. If that's not from Thanet, you can send it back, mate.
Too right, now you're talking. Yes, indeed. Well, Steve's baked meat parcel. That's almost as good as Big Jim's cheese. Let's look at The Guardian now. And after appearing on stage with Jeff Beck, Johnny Depp, the actor, has decided to pen some songs of his own about his recent ordeal, Steve.
Yeah, he's written some songs about this defamation trial against Amber Heard. He's written what rhymes with Heard? You know what rhymes with Heards. We all know what rhymes with sheets will be the next question. There's a track due to be released on Friday the 15th of July. It's from this new album. Some of the songs include... This is a song for Miss Hedy Lamarr. Other songs include Sad Beep Parade. You want to buy it already, don't you?
Yes.
And it's kind of odd that he's got a spin-off from a court case. Yeah. Because ordinarily you'd be on a reality TV show and then you get an album and a tour. But he's got an album and a tour off the back of a defamation case.
That's incredible.
It seems a bit wrong.
I know what you mean. Leave a bad taste in the mouth.
It was an incredible case, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised that he's sort of turned it... what I want to know is these, like, country and western songs, you know, like, I turned up at the court one day, like that. Is it going to, like, tell an actual story, or is it more like a metaphysical sort of interpretation of events? Like, she drove me crazy! Rah! Like,
down the dirty on my sheets.
Yeah! I just want to know the style.
I'm just trying to think of Johnny Depp-related pop hits. I'm Still Pirating. Edward Scissor Sisters.
Yes, nice.
That's all I've got. Let's quit while we're ahead, shall we? I'm here all week. Let's have a look at this next story, which is burning a hole in our pockets. And it's in The Guardian, and it's another TikTok trend with consequences, Steve.
This is Frog Army Stunt. I mean, I'm on TikTok. I never heard of this thing. I guess I'm not in the correct part of the algorithm. So there's been two TikTokers, probably what they're called. One of them saw loads of eggs in a pond and thought, I'm going to build a frog army. And another one thought, I've got a lot of ladybirds going on. And they've released them. Now, scientists are now alarmed at the claims of releasing 10 million frogs and 100 million ladybugs into these areas. Now, he's got a small pond, and he said he was going to make a bigger pond for 10 million frogs. Have you run the stats on that, Einstein?
Oh, boy.
How big a pond would you have to be? So the problem is, I mean, they're getting views on this, millions of views, but the idea of getting that many frogs and releasing them into an area is going to mess the area up. It's effectively saying, for TikTok likes, I will mess up an ecosystem.
Yeah, Spencer, you're not having it.
Not at all. This is an appalling thing. I don't know what the square footage is that a frog requires. And also, what is the roaming space of a frog? This person is not caring about the frogs. Like, how territorial are the frogs? What type of frog is it? And if you have these frogs, and what if they're the frogs that can change gender, you know, like the Jurassic Park frogs? And then they all just... Suddenly 10 million frogs becomes like 40 million frogs. It's ridiculous. And just for TikTok likes, yeah, this person is going to absolutely waste an ecosystem wherever he puts all of these frogs. This is not a good thing.
Let's hop to our next story. Sticking with the Express, and Google seems to have a mind of its own with its recommendations, Steve.
So Google users who search, this is Google Images, in case you want to do this at home, search for desk ornaments, have found an interesting set of pictures which are Nazi desk ornaments.
I think we might have a photograph of this.
Oh, good.
That's a very regrettable search.
Imagine you just searching for desk ornaments and what does the algorithm know about me?
That's the last time we look at the photo library on Steve N. Allen's iPhone.
But surely they could filter this out. That's what I don't understand, right? Yeah, I'm sure there are some Nazi desk ornaments, but isn't Google getting rid of them? I don't want to have to type in minus quote marks Nazi on every single search term to make sure they don't pop up.
No, ideally not. Well, on that rather inflammatory note, that brings us to the end of the programme. My thanks to the brilliant Steve N. Allen and Diane Spencer. And don't forget that this programme is stripped across the week, 7 days a week, that's right, at 11 o'clock. So do join us again tomorrow at 11. Dan Wootton's back tomorrow at 9, and I'm back in the hot seat for Mark Dolan tonight on Friday. Thanks for your amazing company this weekend.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. On Mark Dolan.